Hello and happy Thursday to everyone attending today's webinar. This is Kayla Kurth, and I'm going to do some more specific introductions here in just a second. But really quick, just thank you all for joining us. We're really excited about today's topic. So we'll go ahead and just jump right in. So your presenters today are myself, Kayla Kurtz. I'm the Senior Digital Advisor here at Hannafin Marketing. I'm also a blogger for PPC Hero and a Twitter addict, so definitely follow me. And then we've also got Jeff Baum, who's one of our Senior Account Managers here at Hannafin. He also blogs for us at PPC Hero and likewise is on Twitter at JeffBaum71. So we look forward to connecting with all of you and continuing this discussion well after today. Speaking of today's discussion, we're going to be discovering some strategic metrics that matter and some that don't for our topic today. So, of course, being on the agency side, we have the opportunity to speak with a lot of clients about what their goals are when they first come on board with us. And sometimes they're focused on exactly the right things, but we maybe want to go a layer deeper. And sometimes there are some focuses that aren't necessarily matched to the client's goals where they should be. So that's what we're going to be reviewing today. And again, back to Twitter, we really encourage you guys to join in on the conversation. So we're going to be checking the hashtag ThinkPPC throughout today's presentation. And if you've got questions for Jeff and I, feel free to send those through that way. And we will get to as many as we can at the end. And any we do not cover, we'll be sure to put on PPC Hero at some point in the next couple of days. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. First things first, we're going to do a poll question. So question number one is how long you've been in PPC. So we want to know if you've been in PPC for less than 1 year, 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, or 5+ years. Jeff Baum, how long have you been in PPC, sir?
Well, I've been in PPC just about 10 years now. I was first exposed to it back in 2003 when AdWords first came out, and have been actively managing accounts since 2004. So I guess you can consider me a senior citizen in the PPC industry.
I like it. I think we're supposed to call you something a little nicer than senior citizen, right? Like just a veteran or something of sorts, but we'll go
I'm
with that.
sure, but that's what I've heard. That's what I've been told. So just repeating what I've been told.
I like it. Well, I myself have been in PPC for almost 3 years now, predominantly on the agency side and entirely here at Hannafin. So Jeff definitely got more experience than me and somewhat in some different aspects as well. So we'll go ahead and close this poll and show everyone the results. So it looks like most of you have less than a year of experience. So hopefully we'll be able to talk through some of those metrics that it can get really easy to get the bright and shiny focus on, even if they're not necessarily top level goal aligned metrics. And then everybody else is kind of evenly spread out. 1 to 3 years is at 33%, 3 to 5 years at 13%. And Jeff, you do have some friends up there with you, 10% at 5+ years. Awesome. Perfect. Well, we're also going to go ahead and move on to, let's see if there we go. We'll move on to poll question number 2, which is how do you manage your accounts? So select one of the following. Either you manage it yourself, you manage it as a part of a team, you outsource your account management to an agency similar to Hannafin, or maybe you're doing one of those things, but you're also rethinking how that account is managed and looking at some potential other options. All right, Jeff, I'll kick it to you again. How much agency versus in-house experience do you have?
Most of my experience has been in-house. It's just been the last 6 months since I've been with Hannafin that I've been on the agency side, but I've also been on the other side where I've been in-house and have managed agencies. So if I was taking this poll, I would cover everything except for how I'm rethinking my account or how my account has been managed. So I've sort of been on both sides of the coin.
Excellent. That's great. Like I said before, I've been just here at Hannafin on the agency side, and Jeff, we're happy to have you. I'm glad we were able to bring you in.
Thank you.
Awesome. So we closed that poll, and it looks like the lion's share of you guys are managing your accounts yourself. So you must be very busy people. We'll get 71% of you that are managing that account yourself, 21% that are part of a team. No one who's coming in as using an agency. So that's actually the first time I think I've ever seen that, not at least one person. And then 7% of you are rethinking things. So hopefully we'll be able to share some insights today that reach out to all of you, whether you manage yourself, in-house with an agency, for a year, less than that, or with Jeff Baum for a decade or so. So we'll go ahead and hide those results, and let's just get into some content. All right, so this first question, is quality score really so important? How can this metric be used to shape account strategy? Jeff, I'm going to kick this one to you.
Sure. Well, the short answer is quality score is important. It suggests the health of your account and how things are functioning. But I would qualify this by saying that you need to take quality score with a grain of salt. I've actually had instances in my career where I've had high quality score keywords, accounts where my scores have been, 7 and above, but yet the performance of those keywords haven't been as strong as my keywords that have had lower quality scores. And this is in terms of lead cost, volume goals, and also just in traffic. Also, another thing is certain industries just have inherently lower quality scores. For example, I've worked in education in the bankruptcy industry, and Google just assigns just an inherently lower quality score. So in those instances, getting a quality score of a 3 or 4 could be like getting a 7 or 8 in another industry. And to answer the second part of the question of how this metric can be used to shape account strategy, what I do is I look at the individual keywords. There's a little diagnostic box that'll tell you what Google thinks your expected CTR, your relevance, your overall relevance, and your landing page relevance. What Google views it. Do they think it's average? Do they think it's below average or above average? I use that to shape the strategy, because if you look at enough of the keywords and you see what the diagnostics are telling you, it might point out a weakness or an opportunity in your account. If you see that there's a lot of instances where your landing page relevance is low, as part of your strategy, you need to do some conversion rate optimization or some design to bring those pages up to standard. Or if you have a low click-through rate, that you're going to have to work on your ads to improve. So it really does guide your strategy, but I don't focus so much on the number of bringing my quality score from a 6 to a 7 or from a 5 to a 6. I focus on how can I get more people to come to the site and get more people to convert. So I sort of look at it more of what can I do to meet my goals, and just use quality score is sort of my guide to get me there.
Yeah, I think those are all really good points, Jeff. I love quality score. I think it's a really beneficial metric and something that you can manipulate and optimize as much as possible to try to make up on the click cost side of things as much as you can without just having to increase your bids, of course, to be competitive. So I always encourage clients and any accounts that I'm managing to at least let us put some sort of a strategy as definitely like a third or fourth layer priority when it comes to specifically just optimizing quality score. But anytime that's the first thing someone's concerned about, I always wonder why, because it's usually a different performance metric that they're truly concerned with, and they've just, for whatever reason, bubbled it down to being quality score related. So I agree completely, Jeff. All really great points.
Great.
We'll go ahead and move to discussion point number 2, and we'll break this one up into a couple of different sections. So first off, Jeff, why do you think it's so important to focus on cost per lead or cost per acquisition metrics in paid search accounts?
Sure. Well, I think cost per lead, cost per acquisition is sort of your compass. That those goals and those numbers sort of tell you, is your account on track or not on track. So if you're reaching your cost per lead or cost per acquisition metric, then you have an opportunity to grow. And then on the other side, if your account is not meeting those metrics, what do you need to do in order to get to that goal that was set out for the account? So without having that compass, anything else you do in the account doesn't really make sense, because it's not tied to a master goal. And your master goal should be hitting the right costs and the right acquisitions, along with lead volumes or sales volumes. So I think that's why it's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree completely as well. The second portion of this question is, when do you need to measure beyond CPL or CPA? And Jeff, if it's okay with you, I'll go ahead and take this one.
Go ahead.
So I think when it really becomes crucial to measure beyond just that interface level data, or maybe even what you can see in analytics, is when there's a potential that you're going to be held accountable, whether from an in-house or an agency perspective, for a deeper layer of bottom line revenue or return on ad spend. So if you're working with a client who could potentially bring you in to talk to their C-level about exactly how PPC contributes to, let's use EDU as an example, to total enrollments in one semester over another, you're going to want to start as early as possible trying to find out ways to track down to like a cost per enrollment rather than just a cost per lead number, because ultimately that's what everyone who's really in charge is concerned with, and eventually that information will get back to you. So try to take a look at the industry, the vertical that you're in, the relationship that you have with the client or your in-house team, and really figure out exactly when and if it could come down to you being asked questions about, okay, beyond when you send the click or the lead through, what happens to it after that? Jeff, do you have anything to add?
I was just going to say you make some excellent points there, and I think it really comes back to the whole thing of you you need to understand the context of how you got to where you were. So just showing a CPL or CPA kind of gives you the final result, but you also need to know, are you getting enough traffic to your site? Is your site converting, as well as it can? What campaigns are working, what's not working? Without understanding all that and connecting all those pieces together, then when you're talking to the C level and they ask those questions, you don't have a good answer for them. You have to tell them the story of how you arrived where you were. So I think, just to back up your point, it just makes total sense to look at everything and tie everything back to those metrics.
Absolutely. We're getting some really great questions too for at the end of this, Jeff, just so you know. So we'll definitely be sure to review those, you guys. Keep them
Awesome.
coming. All right, great. So discussion point number 3. Why is impression share so important? And is impression share really a strategic metric? I'm going to let you take this one again, Jeff.
Sure. Well, impression share is important because it's essentially your market share. So impression share is how many times did your ad show in relation to the total amount of times your ads could show for an auction. So let's just say your impression share is low at 30%. That means you have a 70% opportunity gap. So understanding how often your ads are appearing is crucial. And why is it strategic? Because it tells you that you have work to do. And whether it's improving your ad rank or whether it's your budgeting, it's just so important to know that, because search marketing is such a competitive space. If you're missing out, your competitors are just going to slide right in there and they're going to take that market share and that impression share for you. So make sure not to ignore that metric. It's so easy to look at click-through rate, for example, and say, wow, we're doing really good here. But that could be, I have a great click-through rate on the 30 or 40% of the time I show. You want to have a great click-through rate for the 90 or 95% of the time that you show.
Yeah, I think the way I like to use impression share is really just as an initial indicator of whether or not there's more potential. If you log in and you take a look at your impression share data and it looks like you're nailing down around 80 to 85% of it, you're certainly doing a great job, but there is still some additional market reach out there. Versus if you get in and you take a look at your impression share and you're getting that less than carrot 10%, there's obviously a lot of a gap there to be made up. So all very, very good points about impression share. I think it can be used as a strategic metric. It just has to be used as a leading indicator strategic metric that encourages you to dig into other things deeper, like your ad copy or your keyword coverage or whatever the case may be.
I agree.
Great. So discussion point 4, how often should average cost per click or average position be included in top reported metrics? I want to put a small caveat on everything I'm going to say after this, because first and foremost, they should be included when whoever you are answering to wants them included. So even if average cost per click isn't necessarily something that you're specifically managing towards, because it's not necessarily the most important. Same thing with top position. You don't always want to be in a top position. Maybe you are shooting for a 4 to 7 or something like that. You don't always seem to quote unquote care about these metrics, but whoever you're sending these reports to is really who matters. So if average cost per click is something that they want to hear about, again, try to dig into why that's something that they're focused on rather than, as Jeff mentioned earlier, a cost per lead or a cost per acquisition, something that's a little bit deeper down the path of finding you a new customer. When it comes to average position, that's usually coming down to a competition thing. So either your client or your in-house team wants to know, well, if we're not in the top spot, who is, and why are they there and we're not? So in terms of including very specific, this is my $2.35 average cost per click, or we are at an average position now of 3.6 versus last month when we were at a 3.9. I don't know if necessarily reporting to that layer is going to be crucial or important to any account. However, discussing whether you're making gains or losses in those areas might be a better way to shape that conversation, and then also gear those conversations towards focusing on those top line metrics like CPL, CPA, cost per enrollment, or cost per whatever the case may be for your vertical. I think the only addition to that I've got is if it's a brand new account, discussing average cost per click and average position may be one of the only things you've got to talk about, because you got to wait to get enough data to really talk intelligently and strategically about conversion data. So do keep that in mind if you're starting from scratch. Try to monitor that average cost per click and average position right out of the gates, just to make sure you're not overpaying for something that you could very easily restructure within your account and make perform better. Jeff, anything to add to point 4?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I agree with what you're saying. I think average position is kind of tricky. I think for us who have been in PPC for a while, we know it's all relative. We know that the top spot in a lot of instances may not necessarily be the best place to be in, but it comes down to why aren't we in the number one position? The other guy is up there. We have to be on top. I think that metric should really be broken down really into a deeper report that shows your conversion by position. You know, how are we actually performing in the number one versus the number two or number three position? So I think you have to be very careful with average position. It could be a little bit misleading.
Yeah, that's an incredibly valid point for sure. Who cares if you're in position 1 if over getting there you actually decrease your conversion rate by 0.5%?
Exactly.
Yeah, awesome. Moving to point number 5, we want to talk about how valuable the view through conversion metric is and whether there are any useful takeaways from that data number. Jeff, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts on the view through conversion out of the many metrics that Google provides, I find that this one has of limited value. View through conversion is basically when someone has seen an ad of yours on the display network. They don't take any action, but then later on they come in through search, they do a search, and then they eventually come to your site and convert, whether it's a lead or a sale. So I think it gives some okay suggestive evidence that your display campaign is of value to you. It could be valuable too if your display campaign isn't necessarily performing in terms of uh, lead cost goals or volume, but it is suggesting that it's providing a lift in search. But Google doesn't provide any insights other than someone came into the display network, saw your ad, and then converted over on the search side. So while I think that there's some limited takeaways, like I just said with display, just sort of knowing that your display campaign does have a value, I find it's very limited.
Yeah, I think that those are all really valid. And this is the part where I get to say I've got very, very, very limited experience with really managing an account that looks at view through conversion metrics whatsoever. So I'll go ahead and let you be the authority on that one, Jeff, if it's okay with you. Awesome. So we're actually rounding out into our final point for today's discussion, which is how do you know when it's time to shift your metric focus or strategy? I'll go ahead and take this one because I get this question a lot, both with our internal clients that we are managing and ones that we're trying to bring on board with us. sometimes they've been working with an agency previously, or they've been managing their account in-house, and they've just sort of always focused on this core set of 3 metrics or so. And the question is this the right set of metrics to look at? And if it is for right now, when won't it be anymore? And really, one of our big goals with any of our clients, new, old, indifferent, is to always try to be moving forward to the next thing. So if we hit a goal, let's set a new one. I think that's a really easy place to say, okay, no matter what, when we hit a goal, let's renegotiate and look at our metrics and our strategies and make sure that they all still fit, and that we maybe can't shift to that next layer of cost per tracking beyond just leads or acquisitions. I think also anytime your business model changes, this is really important for in-house. So if you've decided to either expand or contract your business model, the services or the products that you offer, really take some additional time as well to sit back and look at your metrics and your strategy around PPC and whether that needs to shift. And look at it really quite deeply. I always say it's better to do that math and have those difficult conversations now rather than wait until you are 6 months into tracking what is a metric that no one cares about, at least anymore, right? So those are my general thoughts about when you should take some time specifically to sit back and look at your strategies. Jeff, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I can relate an experience that happened just a couple of days ago. One of the clients that I manage for the last 6 months, their sort of guiding principle to us was to get us as many leads as we possibly can. And I always felt that there was going to be some point where they were going to say, we can't get as many leads as possible. We need leads at the right price. And lo and behold, 5 o'clock the other day, I got the phone call. Their leads and their cost per deals are too expensive, so we have to be able to shift strategy. So I think in some ways you have to be one step ahead of your clients or your managers within your organizations to know when they're going to switch strategy or when you think that strategy needs to be shifted, because it can happen at any time. And in PPC, you have to be really, really flexible at any point to drop what you're doing and make that 180-degree turn and then go in a completely another direction. So I would say it's important to execute the strategies that have been set, but don't get married to them. Realize that they're flexible and they can change at any point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of my favorite things about PPC, but it's the thing that you hate to talk about, which is that the truth of it is it's not going to be the same beast in 6 months that it is today. So that could very well line up with meaning you need to change up your strategy or the metrics that you're focusing on. Awesome. We're going to go ahead and move to our final poll really quick, and then we're going to take our Q&A. So we just want to know if there's any way Hannafin might be able to help you guys out. So if you are looking for some PPC management, let us know. If you're possibly looking for an audit, you've got a team in-house and maybe you guys just want a list of things to do. Potentially looking for a retainer, so maybe have us help alongside. And then we've also got a free solutions blueprint for those accounts who are spending more than $20,000 a month in ad spend and are also possibly looking to outsource that, the management of those accounts to an agency, again, similar to Hannafin. So let us know what you are interested in there. We'll give you guys just a couple of seconds. We do have quite a few questions actually. So I'll go ahead and let you guys know that we're probably not going to get to all of them. We'll try our best, but if we don't, we'll make sure that we post them up, like I said, on PPC Hero along with the recording for this session and with some responses from Jeff and I. One of them I think I'm actually going to steal and use as a blog post, so that one will be covered ad nauseum. Cool, so we'll go ahead and just close those results and move on to our live Q&A. All right, perfect. So our first question, Jeff, I'm gonna give you this one.
Mm-hmm.
Do you use rules for campaigns? And I assume when they say rules, they're talking about automated rules like within AdWords interface. And if you do, which rules do you have set up for your accounts?
Sure, I do use rules. I've been using them basically for bid rules. I have a client where we needed to be really aggressive with our bidding, and it's a huge account. It has close to 2 million keywords in it. So instead of trying to manage that manually, we set a bid up that basically says, take any keywords that are not at the top of the page and roll them to the top of the page. And in this instance, we did analysis and found that this particular client converts better when they're in the number one spot. So we roll everything to the top, and then that rule runs once a day. And then it's almost like a cycle. So anything that drops off to position 2 at any point during the day, the next morning, it'll bid those rules right back up. And then we also have other rules that are in effect that for our slower times will reduce bids by 30%. And then, for example, like on a weekend when traffic is a little slower and conversion is off, and then we'll automatically have those bids come right back up.
Yep, that's a really good call. I like those. I've never really used a lot of rules other than very similar to what you said, kind of simple, basic ones. So just watch this for sure, and if it's not converting, turn it down. If it is, turn it up just a little. But for the most part, I've used more manual rule setting, I suppose. All right. Question number 2, how do you attribute PPC marketing to cost per enrollment? So we talked about that a little bit earlier in the session, and we talked about beyond just a cost per lead or a cost per acquisition in the EDU vertical, really managing more to a cost per enrollment. So saying after a student has finally enrolled and is taking courses at a particular university, how much did it in total cost to get them to that point from a PPC perspective? So the basic but not so specific answer to this is that it requires some pretty detailed reporting all the way through the entire university's side. So if they're using a CRM like a Salesforce or something like that, you can link in all of your PPC data that way, and then just make sure that they're tracking each of those potential students all the way up until they do enroll. And then it's a pretty simple process to then siphon all that information backwards so that you can attribute it to down to the keyword level for PPC. So it really kind of depends what the individual client or account already has in place in terms of tracking, and then just finding ways to link those things up either in analytics or offline and then manage to them that way. Jeff, I know you do that a lot. Do you have any specifics about how to get those reports set up?
Well, the way we do it is, we take our AdWords and Bing data, and then the client will send up their data that has from their BI system that has, the leads, because there might be some lead scrubbing that's going on. So we get the actual lead count, and then out of that, how many people enrolled and how many people that are started. And like you said, Kayla, it's a very simple calculation. It's just taking the spend and dividing it by the amount of enrollments and the amount of starts, and then that's how we come up with those enrollment and start cost numbers.
Perfect. Great. Hopefully that answered that question for our attendee. If not, just holler at us later. We'll try to help out some more. Q3, this is the one I'm actually going to steal for my blog post. Someone asked, what's the fastest way to increase impression share? And I really just like that question. And I think there may be a couple of fastest ways. So I'm going to write a whole post about it. So stay tuned. Q4, is impression share more important than average position? And then they give some qualifiers here. So for example, they said they've got an impression share of 84% at position 2.4, and their competition has 70% impression share at a position of 1.2. I'll give my really quick answer to this, Jeff, and then I'll let you chime in as well. I think in this situation, you're learning quite a bit here in that, yes, maybe impression share is more important than that top position. However, ultimately, I'm going to ask you to look at your conversion numbers for those positions. So if your competition is converting more of that 70% because they're at that top position, that's really, truly all that matters. Jeff, what are your thoughts?
I think it's the same thoughts. I think that suggests that there's some work to do on not only the conversion side, but how to improve that impression share. I think the average position is, again, it's a little bit misleading. It's good that you're at the top, if that works, but you're not showing often enough to really compete with that person who's in the top position. So I think you really have to, go back through and see what's causing the lower impression share and improve upon that. Because if you're in position 2, but you can show more than the other person, you're ultimately better off.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely agreed. All right, I think we got time for a couple more questions. Okay, so this first one, or not this first one, the next one is, what metrics are most important to you as a PPC manager and why? And it's actually got a secondary question about which ones are the least important. Jeff, which is your preference? Do you want to take most or least important? I'll take the other.
Okay, I'll do least.
Okay, deal.
Do you want me to start off with the least most important ones?
I think yes.
Okay, so for me, it's the view through conversions because it's just such limited information. And the other least important metric to me is click-through rate on the display network. I think that that's a metric that really doesn't mean much of anything. I think on the display network, you have to focus on conversion because you can get so much more traffic from so many different areas around the internet that it skews that number completely.
Yeah, I agree. In terms of most important, I think you have to always say return on ad spend or return on investment, right? Because that's ultimately where you're truly determining how much these dollars and cents you're investing in a PPC is contributing to the bottom line of the growth of your business. And anytime I discuss with a client what their return on ad spend or ROI is right now, if they ever don't have an answer, that goes to the top of the pile in terms of priority. Is how can we get that figured out, and how do we track it so that we do know what that true return on ad spend is, or as true an ROI as we possibly can. If we're talking more interface level stats and metrics, I honestly really do like click-through rate. I try to tell people don't make that your top, right? To CPL, CPA, something like that should certainly be more important, maybe even conversion rate. But I really like to play around with click-through rate. I think that you can learn a lot about your click volume and how many impressions you've truly got to get before you get through the click-through rate you need to get the conversion rate that you want. And you can manipulate that conversion rate on the post-click side, obviously, quite a bit, just making landing page optimizations. But I'm a geek for ad copy, so click-through rate's definitely one of my favorites. Okay, we'll take one more question. Which metric or data point did you previously report on frequently and now you hardly ever talk about? Jeff?
I would say that it was click-through rate.
That's funny.
It's because when I first started, AdWords basically all you could report on was click-through rate. There was, it was before conversion tracking was even around. So I think now I talk about that the least with my clients. Internally, it's very important, and for the reasons that you said, because click-through rate equals more opportunity for leader sales growth. Because if you get more traffic coming through at the same rate, it matters. But clients, business managers, they want to talk about the end result more so than how you got there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the one that I've probably talked about the most previously that doesn't really come up as much anymore is average position. So much so that enough people were concerned about where average position played into their total conversion potential and the marketplace. We could actually manage to seeing reporting that was broken down by bidding to top versus side and things like that. We've seen those kinds of features disappear, and I think that's a direct correlation to the fact that people understand that average position is not necessarily something to focus on, but something to monitor against those metrics that you are most concerned with when it comes to your goals. All right, guys, I think that's going to do it for us for today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. If you do have more questions, certainly feel free to shout those out. Still at that Think PPC hashtag. You can also reach out to us at that URL there if you're interested in the free solutions blueprint but didn't get to that poll question previously. We also certainly welcome any feedback, so feel free to contact us directly at marketing@hannapinmarketing.com. We will be posting this recording on PPC Hero in the next 24 to 48 hours, so bear with us, but keep your eyes peeled. It will be there so you guys can go back and re-listen and share with your friends. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Hopefully a lot of you will also be in attendance next week, and let us know if you've got any thoughts. We'll see you guys soon.